Ah! Well, obviously we need to do something about that. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne. Bloopered already this morning, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, never bloopered, always perfect, along with her adoring, fountains of undying love, or they should be because she saves them so much work, Justin and John. Oh dear, it's one of those mornings, guys. It's one of those mornings. It's one of those. It is definitely one of those. All right, there we go. And I need to go over here. Hey. Oh, my screen is just like screwed. All right, it's one of those days. You are perfection itself, Quindy. Come now. We know this. Yes. How is the crowd today? How art thou, crowd people? Chat, the Twitch chat, the mighty Twitch chat. We are a little rocky here today, but I did manage to find a new bully stick for Kiki. It was a close call this morning. I thought we were out, and we aren't due to get any more until this evening. And then I remembered that I always stick one in her bedtime crate, and she usually doesn't chew it. So yeah. So now we have a bully stick, an emergency bully stick. I may need to go and get yet another emergency bully stick later today because that's the way Kiki is these days. We're going through, we're regressing canine. A very bitey, chewy, regressing canine lately. There we are. So yes, we're doing Sophie today. Obviously, this should be evident from the screen. Oh boy, yeah, I gotta get my head on. I was so good today until I started, I was like, yay, it's going to be a nice, relaxing day. And then I remember, all the things that I need to get Kiki, totally, fountains. We need to find a puppy sitter, who is reliable for her. And we need to, get a groomer that's reliable and I like, and that doesn't charge, $50 million for her. Yeah. Oh, Tiny Chat. Hi, Tiny Chat. Hi, itsy bitsy chat. But yeah, it's just it weighs on me, all this stuff. And then finally, my driver's license came after 3 months, 4 months. I went for a real ID and they just took for freaking ever. And apparently the first one was lost and they had to mail a new one. So yeah, it's kind of insane. So now I've got all this stuff to change. No. Yeah, I know what I used to pay for my dogs, and that was, 10 years ago, so I am expecting things to have gone up by at least 20%, but still, there's limits. There's limits as to what I will pay to get Kiki scrubbed. But I do want to pay to get Kiki scrubbed because she's just rambunctious. It's worth it, Gibson. It's worth it. It's worth it not to have to, do it myself. If I could pay somebody else to bath her and blow her coat out and brush her and do her nails, freaking priceless. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It's just I just need to plan around it. But it's just annoying to find a new one because you have to go and meet them. They want to meet your dog, and it's more time and effort. All right, so what are we doing today? We need to get some metal going, probably. I don't know that I want to do... We need to think a little bit about composition. Classic Sophie colors. Typically, she doesn't have metal armor, except for the... she's normally in the battle bikini, with the loincloth and the bikini, with the bikini having gold edges. But this is obviously non-traditional, non-canon Sophie. So she has a lot of stuff. So we know that we want some red and gold on there if we're going to keep her... Let's get her in focus, first of all. If we're going to keep her canon colors, which we are. That's what I wanted to do. Why would I do the boots? You mean they're metal topped, for sure. This is a full set of armor. They're really... Why would we start at the feet, Pendrake? Canon for Sophie, since I was the first hired staff painter to work with Izzy on doing Sophie miniatures. Canon for Sophie, that's what I've been doing all through this Shadow Raven. Did you miss it? Like, I'm directly picking colors based on the colors that I have always consistently used for Sophie. So it's like the classic Sophie. If you wanted to paint a classic Sophie from the original days, like, these are the colors that I used to paint her. So if you have no interest in that, you can paint her any way you like. But I figured people would be interested to know, like, exactly what colors I tend to use for her skin tones and her reds and her browns, because I had a specific color scheme that I based strongly on Izzy's early art. So over the years, her hair's gotten lighter, like it, and I'm not sure if that's an Izzy choice or if that's like Reaper essentially saying get more saturated with the color schemes, because they totally do that for advertising purposes. I mean, yeah, but you know, the original Sophie is bikini and loincloth Sophie with brown leather and gold trim on the bikini. So all of her iterations for me always draw on that basic red and gold color scheme. Sometimes with black accents, I would often do her scabbard of her sword if present. I would often do that in black and gold. We're thinking classic here, even though this is a non-classic Sophie. I'm basing these. But why would you start with the boots? Like, was there a reason? Was there a reason you said that, Pendrake? Like, is there a particular reason why you'd want to start with the boots? Like, I never ever start with the feet, because the feet are the least important part of the model. So I was curious as to what your thought process was. I always focus on the most important part of the model first. Yeah, she has been. I mean, she was never not family friendly, but she was definitely like camp succubus, like, right, you know, she was that campy kind of thing going on. Although she honestly was as wholesome as Talon could make her and still be a succubus, because Izzy really prefers to draw women in actual clothing and not in battle bikinis. But yeah, but we're not Quentin. We're not Quentin. Just like we're not J.K. Rowling and we're not anybody famous. We're just us. We're not anybody else. Wasn't it Kurt Cobain who said, you know, be yourself, everybody else is already taken? All right, let's see here. So I'm going to paint, actually, you know what, I did say that we were going to work on the hair today, so let's actually do the hair. I believe I used mahogany for it, because that's what I would have used in the olden days. Oh, no, not at all. Sorry, Pendrake, no, I wasn't. If I gave that impression, I'm sorry. I've also just thrown my paint across the under the desk, so I will now have to fetch it. No, I'm not looking at what we can finish in the stream. You should know I have no particular preference for that. No, Pa, me getting up was not a clue for you to come in and be a dingo. Yeah, hi, dingo. Do you want to say hi to the stream? Do you want to say hi? Want to say hi to the stream? Can you get up, Papa? Hey, Chewy. Hey, Papa, do you want to come up? Come on. Okay, there you go. Hi, giant girl. Hi, giant girl who face-pawed me this morning in bed. The face-paw. Girl. Yes, the face-paw. The face-paw. Okay. Good girl. Okay, no. No bites. No bites. Nope. Go and chew. Good girl. Oh, dear me. Yeah, apparently I'm just in it today. Yep, the Keekster. The Keekster comes to say hi. Now she's back to chewing. She is a silly goof, is what she is. And she desperately needs a bath, which is why I'm looking at groomers. We could technically keep bathing her ourselves, but I know that David and I are like, ugh. So, because she's big enough now that you have to like really wrestle her in the tub. Morning, Kerniko. Just missed the Keeks. The Keekster. All right, so let's talk about red hair highlights. So you could use the traditional red hair highlight triad, or the red hair triad, I should say, which has red hair highlight in it. Or you just make it yourself. And what you want to do with this is typically based on how realistic you want your hair color to be. If you want a really orange kind of fantasy hair, then start more with like a rust brown or an oxide red. But I always liked Sophie better as an auburn-haired redhead, so I always start a little bit darker. That's why we started with the mahogany brown, which is a match for the aged red brick of Pro Paint, which is what I used to use for the Sophie hair. Let me pop these out of the way. I've got paints on my desk from the paint-along yesterday. They're pesky, being pesky. There we are. And usually what you're looking for is kind of a red, orange, brown. You want a lighter one. Like I said, rust is a very good color for this. If you don't have rust brown, you could take your oxide red and add just a little bit of either white or a yellowy white, or a little bit of a tiny, tiny bit of yellow plus white. That would give you kind of an equivalent for the Carrot Top Red and Rust Browns of the world. I just keep my oxide to hand because I know I can easily mix those colors from this. So remember your oxides, 9332. So I'm going to pop this into the palette and show you guys why we would actually alter it. If you put this on straight up, it is not going to be different enough. It's going to be different-ish, and you can get these colors if you just layer the oxide red or the oxidized red or whatever they're calling it now over the top of the mahogany. You'll get actually probably a pretty good blend because they're very close. I like it to be a little bit different for my first highlight, so I mean, I'm going to pop just a little bit probably of Osirian sand in there because it's the easiest yellow-white. Like I said, you can also use just a tiny touch, like on the tip of your brush, of candlelight yellow or some other yellow plus some white. But I'm just going to do not even a full drop. I'm just going to do kind of a half a drop pressed up against the side of the palette. 39 months. I know, insane, right? But, you know, a lot of that was the pandemic, Valandar, so, you know, you're forgiven. Everybody was on Twitch or God knows, you know, whatever entertainment we could find for at least 24 of that for 39 months. It's very cold here. It was like 34 this morning when David took Kiki for a walk, I think. Surprised our orange tree still has oranges on it. They're probably dead, but I don't know. They look like they're still alive. You have an opinion you formed yesterday that will get you lynched in Texas. Oh, well. Sometimes you can't help those opinions. Though I mean, I noticed we don't have a Twisted Oma yet. I hope she didn't lose power. The other Texan, another Texan we have. Oh yeah. Whataburger is absolutely just itself. The thing I love about Whataburger, compared to the others, is their burgers are a little bit bigger, and I like that they don't put ketchup on it. Like, I like that it's just onions and mustard, because obviously ketchup is my, bad. So I don't have to ask them to not put anything on it. I don't consider them like, I mean, let's face it, like, if you want a really good burger, you go to like Five Guys, right? Like a good fast food, a high quality fast food burger. But yeah, Whataburger is just a different flavor of all the rest of it. I have no choice since ketchup is like poison to me, Valendar, so I have learned to like mustard. As a kid, I did not like mustard, in fact. It was not sweet enough for me. I had a sweet tooth as a kid. But now, I appreciate different mustards. Hey! No, ma'am. Stop it or you go. Stop it or I'm kicking you out. Yeah. Yeah, you got caught. You got caught being a bad girl. You did. You did. You're a dork. You're such a big dork. Yeah, I mean, it's not a... I mean, I know that Texas loves their Chick-fil-A and their Whataburgers, and Chick-fil-A, at least, is tasty. Yeah, I don't know. I would go to Whataburger every once in a while. Like, I liked their burgers better than Burger King and McDonald's, for sure. No. They're a step up from that, I think. But I think your time to go out. I think your time to get kicked out. Yeah, Keekster. If you're going to come up and chew on my sleeve, it's time to go. Bye. Yep, we're going to grab your shoes. We're going to make you go out here. Yep. Here we go. Oh, look. Use your shoes. It's just like a cartoon where the cartoon character gets kicked out the door and all their stuff gets thrown out after them in a giant jumble flying through the air. It's like Kiki getting kicked out the gate and her pig ear and her bully shoe getting totally tossed out behind her. I just don't do fast food anymore, so like Five Guys is the only one, and that's just because, you know, they actually have a good bunless burger. And the In-N-Out has a good keto style, you know, bunless burger as well. Oh, Twisted Oma came. So you didn't lose power? Obviously, since you're online, you didn't. If you did lose it, it's back. Yeah, I never was into Fuddruckers. Like, we tried them once, and I was like, it's a lot of food, but that's American eating. Very, very cold out west here, too. Ugh, yeah, Inara, that's awful. Why? How can the world, like, it's just, yeah, it's just inhumane. This is inhumane. Oh, I've heard about belly acres. Yeah, these days, if I want a good burger, we just make them. David has learned to make a good burger, and he's learned to grill a good burger, so I'm adding that Assyrian sand in here, and that's going to lighten this up just a shade, so now we can see there's a definite difference. It means our highlights are going to show up a little bit better. And then the next, red hair highlights really vary. So for those of you who've been following along on my paint along on my Patreon, we have a bust paint along and a 28mm paint along. But here I've gone with much more of, I've gone with, in fact, Lotus Orange with a bit of Assyrian sand in it. So this is one variant, and it's essentially kind of the time-honored one. Yeah, Lotus Orange and white with a little bit of yellow. A flagging pound of meat. Yeah, exactly, Inara. Exactly. That's what we're at. I mean, and that's where I am with steak, too, because I can make such a good steak that there is no point in going to a steakhouse. Like, honest to God, guys, I can make a better steak than most steakhouses. Like, if Texas taught me one thing, it was how to do a steak in cast iron to, like, perfect doneness. So... You might be the toastiest person in chat. I don't know. I think it's like 40 here right now, Kerniko. But yeah, I don't, so yeah, usually, I stopped doing fast food when I started doing keto because there was nothing really that I liked that I could still eat. Except in like, if I'm on the road and it's an emergency, I'll go to McDonald's and just get a bunless cheeseburger with no ketchup. But I can't eat most of it on low carbs, so I just stopped going to fast food. Yeah, ice. Yeah. Oh yeah, because you're at night. I can't check my phone because it's plugged in. But it was like 34 this morning when David took Kiki for a walk. So right now the sun is out, so I guess it's up to 40, 41 here. So yeah, I don't actually prefer the open flame because I find it too unpredictable, Shadow Raven. Whereas with cast iron in the oven, I can dial it into like perfect doneness every time. Whereas on a grill, there's always, I find, some variance, which is, the artistry of learning to grill really well, but it's just not something that I care to learn, and David isn't like interested in it because he's like, you make really good steak. Why would I ever have you not do cast iron? And I'm like, yes, a good point. Like, I think we tried it once after we got the grill, and we just had a steak that got to the wrong level of doneness, and it was just like, well, why even bother? Like, it would just take so long to learn how to nail the doneness to the point we like it. Oh, wow. Ice in Memphis. Wow. Oh, it's Quindy. I didn't miss how much Quindy. I missed Quindy's temperature. But yeah, you're probably toastiest. Oh, Jesus. I wish. Oh, man. No. I guess that makes sense considering where you are. And I'm far north of you, so relatively speaking. So let's just put on our first layer of color, and we'll use this oxide red. Right, exactly. When you've got the flame dialed in and you understand the grill and how to make it work for you every time, then of course you definitely prefer open flame to an oven and a cast iron. But I learned in the oven cast iron, and I can do everything in there now. So, and we've got a convection oven now, which is even a really good convection oven. So that's even nicer to do some things. So, yep, that's just the way I roll these days. There's no shame in it. I refuse to be shamed because of not using a grill. You use what you can use to get really tasty food, and if people think that you're copping out, then you're never inviting them over for dinner. That's it. So even this is not really showing up. Notice I'm hardly getting anything on the level of highlights. So essentially I've thinned it too much. It's an interesting thing about the oxides, and you'll see it even in the Chimera colors because they've loaded them up with pigments so very much. But although oxide pigment itself has a lot of coverage out the gate, the more you put in it, the more fluidy the base gets, and I find that they actually lose coverage pretty fast. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a good Sophie. I mean, we were talking earlier, Ronan, about the fact that Izzy Talon, the Reaper's artist, the one who created Sophie, always preferred to do Sophie, with more clothing. Like, really prefers to draw women with more clothing. So this subject matter worked for her. Oh, yuck. Denver sounds terrible. It was actually very 2022, though, running, because this was the 2022 ReaperCon Dungeoneer Sophie. So she's meant to be a dungeon warrior. And you don't go up against, dungeon critters with your battle bikini. Yeah, so I'm going to try, I've lightened it a little bit. I added another drop of oxide, and I added another half drop of the Osirian sand. And now I'm going to see if I can get this a little bit more pronounced. And because it's 28 millimeter and because she's turning her head, I want my highlights to be pretty much on top of her head. A lot of this is going to get highlight, but when you are painting hair like this that has just a slight wave to it, you've got to pay attention to where kind of the places it dips and the places it swells, because you don't want to paint the whole thing flat. So essentially, looking at the top here, we've got a highlight here, and when I look down, we've got a little dip here and then another swelling area out here. So I'm going to focus my highlights on the hair that is kind of poofing out, and I'm going to leave dark in between. And this is a great model to show you that hair, when I say that hair highlights on a bell curve, you can see exactly what it means, because we're going to be essentially going up and down and then up and down in a smooth bell curve as far as our highlights go. Oh my, Gibson. And then we've got another little sagging part here, and then we're going to hit this part that comes out over her shoulder. And actually, I need to remind myself of my rule, which is to paint pretty much the whole thing and not worry about strands so much. So I'm going to do that, actually. Let's go back up to the top of the head. I was on autopilot. I don't know. I slept really well last night, so I don't know why my brain is like kind of gone all scattery this morning. All right, and we're going to get the other side of her hair as well, which is a little bit of rub off here. I don't know. I don't think it's wrong thinking. Like I feel wrong when I don't go out for my walk in the evening, even when it's really cold and I don't want to go. It's a snow blower and not a leaf blower, huh? So I had to cover over the rub off, and now I am waiting for that to dry so that I can bring this color in. But essentially, all around the crown of the head, you're going to find a highlight. A little less on this side of the head because her head is tilted. So because she's tilting her head to the side, you're going to get more highlight on this side of the part and less highlight on this side of the part, because here you've got the highlight hits here, but then the hair falls straight down. So you're going to get a highlight, but then you're right away going to hit some shadow. Yeah, she's got a ballistic and a pig ear, Grey Wolf, so she's been a little beast. I'm going to have to get more chews for her today. I can tell it's one of those days. I can't wait till she's a year old and calms down a bit. So again, kind of like you've got that straight drop there, but then this hair comes out a little bit so you can get some highlight into it. And we can look at up here. I'm probably going to kind of creep it up a little bit, creep up that highlight a little bit, just because I don't want to leave a huge block of shadow. I can bring this highlight down a little bit, but then mostly concentrate on the highlight on the top after this. So. Yeah, I really don't miss not having snow. I thought I might, but in Texas it was so infrequent to actually get snow in North Texas that I just got used to not having snow when I was there. So now here in California, it's just one step further where you never get snow. And If you want snow, you have to drive to the mountains, which aren't very far away. So as it turns out, it's not a terrible option if you want snow. David's got his ski trip coming up, and so I am looking at taking the Keekster along with me to Arizona to visit the folks. So then I will be out for a few days. I'm going to... I touched base with my parents, so now I just need to get the exact dates wired down, and then I'll let you know, Quindy. Since I missed going with the family on the holidays, I want to see my folks visit. And for some reason, they want me to bring Kiki, so now that they don't have a dog anymore. And Arizona's pretty nice. Though they do get a lot of rain in the winter, but I don't mind that. So just a little bit of highlight. And here I am again just painting over it. I'm trying not to, although it looks different, but I did actually paint down in here. I don't want to pay attention to the strands right now with this highlight. You want to paint it like it's cloth. Paint it as if it were cloth. It's okay to kind of vary it so it's not just a block. Like I can bring up a little bit up this like streak of hair or this lock of hair or whatever, right? So it's okay to vary it a little bit and make the edge not quite so pronounced. But I don't pick out strands until the end. Otherwise the hair just looks ropey. It looks weird, especially with 3D sculpted hair. Although this is actually quite good 3D sculpted hair on this model. I've been told that it's very difficult to sculpt hair and fur in 3D with the 3D programs. It's just a whole different ball game, so we've got these blocks of highlight here. We don't get much rain in the South Bay at all. We got a lot over those that 2-week period when we had the atmospheric river over us, which was actually got us more on track to what we should be. But now that that's gone, we're back to nothing. We had a tiny bit of rain, a very light misting of rain on Sunday, but that's like the first since the river left. And it was very, very short-lived. I think that the South Bay is headed for Arizona type climate, except maybe with even less rain, since at least AZ usually gets some good thunderstorms in the winter months. So I'm getting the top of the head again. I'm just building up my highlight color. Oh, yeah, this calendar year, yeah. Yeah, because otherwise we're supposedly still in a drought compared to how much rain we used to get. So, but at least this helped with our reservoirs. Yeah, it's just, as I've been told by numerous sculptors, it's very difficult to get good hair. This is actually pretty darn good 3D sculpted hair with its amount of variance. It's not like big ropes, which are very hard to paint realistically. All right, so I put a couple of layers on this, and now we're really seeing more of the light, and I need to apply more here and here. And I am leaving that shadow spot right in there. And I'm going to go down here, pick up the strand, and that all comes back to this part of the hair. But you can see how that even now is like starting to tell you there's light up here. It's hitting the hair. We're also going to have the wings down here coming out, so I don't want to pick up too much at the bottom, but I'll pick up a little bit. And then we'll go up to our next highlight layer and start picking out strands. With a big thing like the bust I showed a bit ago, you actually wait a little bit longer to go to your strands sometimes, but and I want a little bit more here. I'm just going to kind of drag it upside just a little bit toward the ear there where the part comes out to get a little more variance and a little less. I don't want such a big shadow area, so I'll bring it up. That's starting to read pretty well. Now with red hair, you can highlight it up with a pretty bright orange and get it to that state by that way. If you're going to bring it up instead with more of a German orange or a coral color like lotus orange, then if you want to make sure that you have a vibrant red tone, you probably want to glaze with an orange or orange red afterwards. We may do that with Sophie. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to go with the next level up. I do like Lotus Orange, the new color for red hair highlights. I think it's a really good color for that. If you want to take it more orange, it's more of a salmon or a coral color. I would probably add in a drop of Sunrise if you wanted to take it brighter. So let's try that. It just depends on how orange you want your highlights. With the model that I'm working on for the paint along, the elf bust, the elf archer bust, we're doing like a dusk elf. I wanted her to have a more unnatural, more vibrant red hair, so I didn't go as orange because her hair in the concept art that we were working from was really red. The character's hair was really red, so instead here I will go more with a mix of these two, which will keep the hair less red. It will bring it up more toward an orangey, coppery highlight. So I'm going to pop 2 drops of the Lotus Orange. I'm going to start with 1 drop of the Sunrise Orange. There we go. So 2 drops of Lotus, 1 drop of Sunrise, after I pokey tool it. Okay. And then I want a little bit of a white or Osirian sand. Osirian sand is going to give me a little bit of yellow, just like the reason I used it here. I'm going to use it here. Obviously, you guys should know at this point that I use a crap ton of Osirian sand. I just ordered like 2 more bottles because I use so much of it. So this is a much brighter color, but again, as you guys know how I operate, it should not surprise you that I'm going to take a little bit of the previous color and mix it into this either. So first we'll drop a drop of water in there. And that's going to give us a much lighter orange with a bit of a shift toward red and a little bit of that oxide in it to to make it work. It's not as bright as it might otherwise be because I've mixed that brush full of oxide in. So we're going to try this and see how it looks. Alrighty. So with hair, you always want to put your highlights in the middle of the previous highlight. That's what I mean by bell curve. So here we're going to focus our highlights on the strands and in the center. And the more tiny they are, the more kind of kinky the hair will look, like crinkly. The longer your highlights, the longer you can keep your highlights till the end, the more it will look like this, like it's a long strand, right? So Kraken ink is awesome. Kraken ink is a good color. So yeah, make your highlight as wide as you can while still leaving a little bit of the previous highlight at the edges. This is traditional layering, really. So let's go, let's actually, yeah, I'm just going to go around the bottom and then we'll do the crown of the head. Came up with a really pretty color scheme for the cloth on our other paint along model yesterday. Now I want to try it on something else, but I have to finish my Anubis before I can start something new. Though it's end of the month and I didn't get any time to paint anything last night. So here I'm making little strands in between. So when you've got this big blocky hair and it's like strand, 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 it's like rope, right? Because it's 3D modeled. What I do then, and you can see it here, is I paint a strand in between. So that essentially I'm doubling the number of strands that are actually sculpted. And that lets me make a more realistic highlight. So that helps. Yeah, Syrian sand is just a great highlight color. Like, if that color started selling really well, I'd be happy, and it'll be safe from the cancellation machine. Because otherwise I'm going to have to order 16 zillion bottles of it. And you'll find a lot of oil painters who don't use a pure white, they'll use an ivory instead, and that's the same thing as using the Osirian sand. It's less and more vulnerable. Yes, it's true we probably can't cancel colors without Paizo's okay, but it also is a huge risk that Paizo will say, we don't want to do this anymore, and yank the license. That is always the problem with licenses. That's why Ed traditionally did not like to do licenses. We made a deal with Paizo because of Ron's relationship with Paizo, but that doesn't mean that Paizo isn't going to go, hey, you know, we're done with this. And if something like terrible happens to Paizo, like the current OGL fiasco, like really kind of impacts them in a real negative way, then who knows, right? So buy the paint, convince them it's lucrative, right? I don't know how. I mean, the problem too is paint. You don't make a lot of margin on paint because the paint materials themselves and the labor is so expensive. So it's not like Paizo's making a ton of money on this paint line, right? They're just doing it as an additional offering for their fans, along with all the miniatures. So yeah, never any licensed product is always at risk, and that was learned the hard way by Ralph Hartha back in the day when AD&D yanked that miniatures license right out from under them, and they died as a result. The company died, and then of course now it was essentially bought by employees and brought back as Ironwind Metals. But they're very small, and they do sell their models, but they also are a casting house. Yeah, well, that's good. So essentially people want, but that's not good for them long term, guys. Think about that. Okay, so think about what's happening. People are essentially, one they are showing support to Paizo. That's cool because this is forefront of people's mind and they want that company to do well. Two, the fans are saying, we want the original system. You know, we want the OGL system. That's why we play Pathfinder. That number two is a real dinger because it means that inevitably when you have to change your system because you can no longer use OGL, your fans aren't necessarily going to buy your new books. That's what I'm saying. Long term, look long term. Short term, everybody loves your books. But what about when you switch to your new system? What if your new system doesn't go over well? Right? It's a big risk. It's a huge risk for a company that pretty much built itself on the OGL and on 3.5 success. So we don't know, and I'm hoping Paizo is going to pivot smartly and end up, stronger as a result. I'm always for people like doing their own thing instead of like using other people's like tools if they have a good creative team and they've obviously got a large community that's willing to play test, presumably, that they can leverage. Maybe, but wasn't it still largely based on the OGL, Critico, or is it their own system? I thought it was still Pathfinder. And Pathfinder was always based on 3.5 or 3.75 as they brought it out. Like that would have been smart. Like if they essentially pivoted and went away from the OGL with Pathfinder 2nd, that would have been the solution, right? Because then they could be like, whatever. Well, okay, you're always going to get that, right? You got PF2 is disliked by some of the PF1 community. Okay, when does that ever not happen? We've seen so many iterations of D&D, and every time there's a fan of the thing, you can dredge up another person who hates it, Oh, okay. All right. They took pains to remove it from needing OGL. Well, that's good, Gibson. Ah, okay. I see. Oh, and your brain doesn't mix up the rules. Okay, well, that's good. That's good then. Paizo has essentially insulated itself a bit then. That's good. I wonder if they kind of saw the writing on the wall or if they just were lucky to have gone that direction. I think this is okay, but I think I need actually a little bit more light going up to the top of the head here. So I'm going to actually grab a little bit more Syrian sand and add it to my orange. So yeah, so okay, so OGL fiasco probably not going to affect Paizo that much. That's great. So yeah, well, then it's just, does Paizo decide to keep working with Reaper, right? Okay, so I'm mixing this in, and it's going to make a much lighter orange, which I kind of want for the top of the head because it is, and I can also use it for secondary highlight everywhere else. The top of the head is facing the light strongly, so we want a lot of light up there. Yeah. Cool, Gibson. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, they were smart then. Other companies will probably have to pivot the same. Did you guys, I seem to remember somebody saying that the companies who were affected by this were kind of thinking of working together to create a new OGL, their own OGL. Did I hear that right? I don't know that that would ever come to fruition just because companies, you know, working together, but. So that's a very bright highlight. You can see it. Okay. All working on an aura. Okay. Oh, okay. Cool. The ORC. Okay. Well, good. Yeah, it's always a risk. Good, Big Chimpo. Yeah, I hope you like it. I think it keeps the feel of the original game, which I loved, but improves on the system a bit. But yeah, it's very flexible. I hope you have fun. A little bit of highlights along the top edge there. Gotta get this part here. Yeah, Beguiler, that's the good thing, right? Is like inadvertently the funny thing is that, you know, WotC and Hasbro particularly are, you know, like, oh, we have to consolidate our IP. But in reality, what they have done is just give more fuel for creativity on the parts of their competition. Which is great. Iteration is great. Some crappy systems will come out of it, and some good systems will come out of it. Hey there, Mabby. Yeah, we're working on red hair today. We're doing Sophie's hair. Getting it all lined up. Making it pretty. And then we'll have no choice then but to start on all that elaborate armor. Yeah. Well, White Wolf's system I thought was always, it's a storyteller system, right? So it's definitely short on mechanics. It's not a crunchy system. The more dice you roll, technically, like, you know, it doesn't really, it helps you, but it doesn't help you in some ways. Because ones remove, if you play it, that ones remove successes. I always liked I believe in 20th edition they fixed that, and essentially ones do not remove successes. You have to have 0 successes and then roll a 1 to fail, to critically fail, which is much better. Yeah, it used to be that ones remove successes, and then you're like, yeah, well then if you actually need 10s to succeed on something, you have like as higher risk to win through as to critically fail. It's like, yeah, oh, it hurt. So. But yeah, so we'll see what comes out of it. Anytime you've got like when the OGL first became a thing, we got a bunch of kind of craptastic RPG supplements, like a lot. And then we got, you know, some stuff that was great that stayed around, like Pathfinder. And the same thing's going to happen now with this ORC, right? Is we're going to get we're going to get a lot of iteration, and some of it'll be great, and a lot of it'll be not so great. But it gives, it opens the door to a whole new thing, right? And if you're fast off the mark with your iteration and it's decent, you have the chance to get an audience. Oh no. Nico, that's awesome. Yeah, that's actually really great. I love it. Jabberwock, this is the Dungeoneer Sophie from ReaperCon, but I believe she is still available. So number 390, so 30090. ReaperCon Dungeoneer Sophie from this year. Very beautiful model. Lovely, lovely. We already painted the little wings. So, and the little wings actually do snap into place, so you don't even need glue, which is clever Bobby Jackson engineering. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, it's like self-publishing, right? It's the same thing. When self-publishing easily became a thing, you had a huge glut of terrible books, and still do, hitting the market. And then you had some writers actually put their stuff out and really shine, right? So, but you're going to get a very high proportion of not so good to your really goods. It's funny, I was, I got on Quora to look up I was looking up a writing question, I don't remember what it was. But now Quora is sending me digests with people's writing questions, and it's like, oh my God. It really is a whole, did you Google this at all? You know? Like there was a guy yesterday who was like, I finished my novel and I had it proofread, how do I publish it? And it's like he just finished it, he had somebody to check for typos, and then he was going to publish it. And I'm like, I look at that and I look at all the work I've done, I'm like, well, it's two different styles, maybe his book is actually good, I don't know. But so many of the books that go out like that aren't very good. Yeah, except the problem is that all of that noise buries the signal of some good books too, Shadow Raven, right? Because you're fighting, even though the books are bad, and eventually they will, eventually sales will tell. In the meantime, you're all jockeying for position, trying to get eyes on your stuff, right? So we'll see. I mean, I pretty much had industry professionals say that you could write a really good book and it can still not sell. And part of that is going to be like the market and what the market wants, right? What the majority is anybody really looking for a book like yours, right? That's my great hope, is that people will be. But you can't predict that sort of thing other than looking at books that are selling. But you don't want to necessarily, you never want to write to market unless it's still the kind of thing that you want to write. So the one piece of advice that George R.R. Martin gave me was just that, you just got to write what you want to write, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell, but you still got to write what you want to write. Just write what you really love and hope that people will get on your wagon. And George spent years writing what he loved and not really getting a lot of a market for it. So until he got lucky and really hit with Game of Thrones, and part of that was that Game of Thrones was a really great book, and part of it was all the work that Gurm had done and the audience he'd already built, and all that stuff. So, and part of it was just his experience as a writer as well. So, oh yeah. Like Mercedes Lackey was great. I ran into a thread that she was contributing to about self-publishing, or indie publishing, I should say. But yes, and yeah, a lot of the questions they get asked are really out of touch. Like there was a guy, I ran into a discussion on Quora yesterday that I was like this guy did not realize that print on demand was a thing. Which is fine, actually, because I have many relatives who also don't understand. Like if you haven't, but if you're a writer and you're researching this stuff, to still think that you need to like hundreds of boxes of books in your garage, it's like just do a search. Like he had the writer essentially sell essentially tell him, no, you just do POD, man. And he's like, what? I've never heard of this. Vampire romance, guys, is always going to be a thing. It's just going to be less of a thing and more of a thing. It's like werewolf romance, shifter romance. Like shifter romance, still very strong in its market. Like, and vampire romance still has a following. But whether it's like a top genre is what's going to change, right? It's just like paranormal romance was really strong. The market got flooded. A lot of people, still read it, but maybe they read something else more. All these markets are still markets, and there are still people writing in them because there will always be fans of that. It's just that it's not like the thing right now, right? So it's never going to die. Vampire romance is never going to die. Unless, like, all of the good writers of vampire romance, like, stop writing it, right? But even then, there's still going to be people who just, that's their thing. That's what they love. And that's cool. That's okay. But yeah, can you ask that it not be all over, it not be, in the media all the time, not be all the new movies? Yeah, absolutely, you can ask that. But it'll come around again. You just wait. Like 10, 15 years, we'll have another great big huge vampire romance movie that'll take off. And yeah, because you had Interview with the Vampire that really fueled a bunch of that being written, and then you had Twilight 20 years later, and it's gonna be like that. It's like, you guys know this, all things come around, like it goes around, comes around, and it's just going to be up to a new writer to write a book that really fires up people and gets them excited, and then it'll get made a new movie, and you'll have tons of vampires ever again. Oh, are they bringing Blade back? Huh. Yeah, if that movie is good, that could bring vampires back for a resurgence. Yeah, Book Barbarian is the fantasy list, right, Turgeon? I think I read, it's one of the recommended email list sites where they curate books and then, Yeah. Yeah, I actually was looking at them to advertise my book. The thing is, the big thing that will be my first hurdle after I publish is getting reviews. A lot of promotional sites won't even take you, they absolutely will not even look at you until you have at least 10 reviews. So that's going to be our first hurdle to try to get over. Is I'm going to have to enlist help and hope that I have a little author's note at the end of my book that pretty much says it would mean the world to me, and I mean it. If you like my book, leave it a review, because it opens up advertising venues to me, like Book Barbarian. So yeah, right now I have to get my reader magnet done, which I got some good ideas this morning for it, so keep on plugging. And then I need to get my website in place, and then I hit publish. Those are the things. It's kind of scary. And then I have to go back and keep working on book 2 and get that out within 6 months, I hope. Yeah? Why? Why is that? Have you just fallen off of Goodreads, or do you just find that the reviews aren't as useful to you, Turgeon? So here we got a bunch of little strands popped in with this lighter color, kind of coppery highlights here. We are going to go up another level. Oh, no, just ordinary readers, Pendrick. All it has to be is somebody who has actually ordered my book on Amazon and left a review. So, verified purchase reviews. No, you don't get professional, if you're a newbie like me and you're indie publishing, you don't get professional reviews. Nobody will review you. Are you kidding? Yeah, but, so it's just, it's social proof, right? It's people, at least 10 people who read this book liked it enough to give it a review. That's what you're aiming for. And ideally, you have a few more than that. But when you're a brand new book, you don't have many reviews yet. So I'm going to put a little bit of highlight just on the edges down here, you see? Oh no, Korniko. She should have gotten up and left the cinema, except that, you know, the first blade was actually pretty good, so she probably was like, she was maybe confused, but also intrigued. Oh, too many emails. Yep, yep. Yeah, I always opt out. These days I opt out of a lot of email stuff. Unless I still have BookBub. I still get my BookBub emails because every once in a while, because I have both sci-fi, fantasy, and mystery, and I discover actually a lot of new mystery series that way. So BookBub I have found very, very good for mystery series. But I discover less good sci-fi fantasy that way, so... Yeah, Papa, we have 20 minutes to go, so settle down. All right, so we're gonna bring this in over here as well and bring in this higher highlight. Oh, yeah, right. And once you get that, Turgeon, you just don't ever, like, not unless you're like, oh, maybe I'll just open one to see, you know? And then if there's nothing good in it, you're just more likely to let another 253 pile up, right? I just automatically delete my BookBub emails unless I'm looking for something to read. Like, they don't go in a separate folder because it's not a Gmail. So they're not, you know, they do pop up on my radar. But yeah, if I'm looking for something to read, then I might open one. Papa, settle. So you gotta make your highlights shorter and shorter, and I've got all my colors open still, so if I lose a little bit, if I go over a little bit of my previous highlight, I can pull that in and pull the edges out a little bit. And if it gets a little bit too liney, like you can really see the lines, then I'm going to paint a little bit of lighter color in between the strands, just a little, thinned down to make them blend a little bit better. Right. All right, so there we go. We've got that coming in. I want to bring this down here. Okay, I like to kind of take a strand and connect where I can, especially if it's going to be sticking out a bit. There we go. So we're going back and getting more highlights to pop in here. Just a little bit more. If you find that you are like losing some of your main color that you want, if you want to kind of tie things together, think about doing a glaze. Maybe we'll do one just for fun. And you can also make your hair more vibrant that way. Rhonda has done this in the past with blonde hair, if you paint with like oxides and stuff, and then if you do want a more golden color, you can glaze with a color like Saffron Sunset or Marigold Yellow. So here with the red hair, I would probably glaze with my mixture for highlight. I would glaze with Sunrise and Lotus. Yeah. So let's actually do that. Let's get a little bit of, pop a little bit of paint over here. And then we'll see what we can do. I like it. It's pretty. I'm going to do a glaze. And then I'm going to do a highlight, like the last highlight, which is an off-white. Yeah, I mean, Underworld was good. Blade was good. There's been some good vampire movies for sure. Although I like the vampire adventure movies better than the true romance movies. But all right, let's get a drop of the Lotus Orange and a drop of the Sunrise Orange. But then that's the way I read too. I prefer a movie where the romance is secondary. All right, so half and half, Sunrise Orange and Lotus. There. So with glazes, and just as an FYI, I think for my $5 tier for this coming month for February for my Patreon, it's patreon.com/paintingbig. I think I'm going to be doing how to thin various levels, like especially like since I've been using like Chimera and tube paint. I'm just doing just a general PDF on how to thin each of those for various things. CGI for sure. Thanks, Quindy, for the links. All right. And so I'm going to start at a 1-to-1. You don't need to thin Master Series nearly as much as you do other paints to get them to appropriate levels for various techniques. So at a 1-to-1, I'm just going to test it. It's probably going to be a little bit strong. 2-to-1 is more, or 1-to-2, sorry, is more what I would do, paint to water. So I'm going to mix it up, and then to test it, I'm just kind of going to brush it over the surface here. That's really strong still, and this is a really strong coloration. If you wanted to really intensify the hair, you could go with this. Or you could thin it down yet another level and build up a couple layers. I'm going to test paint this over part of the lower and kind of just see, because oranges are weird. Oranges are weird. And this may work. It may be a little bit too much. I'm going to grab just a little bit of it. And I'm definitely going to just paint it just a little bit just over the top. I'm not going to do a big puddle. I think this is going to be okay, actually. It doesn't, it's, the reason to use a stronger glaze is if you still are planning to put additional highlights on the piece, if you don't mind having to redo your shadows if you lose some of them, or your highlights if you lose some of them, and if you want a shift, a strong shift. So I want to warm this up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it section by section. With hair, because there's texture, look at how orange that went. See the difference? So that is a heavy glaze. It's still thinner than a wash would be, but you can see how it changes. Now, as it dries, you're going to lose a little bit of that. So we can see the difference there. And you can see it's also brought up, you can see just a little bit of this is a little bit warmer than this. So if your hair starts to get washed out and you want it to be more orange, red hair specifically, then do a glaze. And remember, this was a 1-to-1, which is a very thick glaze, which is why we're seeing so much drama, so much of a change just in one layer. You could get the same effect with a couple of layers and you could have been more cautious. I decided to just throw caution in the wind because I don't mind if I have to repaint parts, but a lot of people do mind, so yeah. Don't forget the front. So that's bringing it much warmer, see, from the top. So glazes. Glazes are good. And the other thing that glazes do is, of course, they meld your layers together. So this is essentially going to smooth out all my transitions and make them look more blended in. And the reason that it does that is it essentially brings up your shadows one level and knocks your highlights down one level and gives everything a common ground. So it's kind of like me mixing a little bit of one color into all the colors I work with. But it's just done with it's done at a different time in the painting. So now we've got that coming out. I think I need a little bit more. Hair, remember, is the last thing that I learned to paint ever. It has its tricks. And definitely it takes, you've got to kind of understand it. But once you kind of get it and how to highlight it and shade it, it's not difficult. It's just you got to get there. Got to paint it. Got to look at pictures of it. It's much easier to paint hair on a model like this that has relatively straight but still wavy hair. So this is like a model where this type of hair is the easiest to learn hair on. Never try to learn hair on curly hair. It's just like you can't follow the general rules with it, and it's very hard to make it look good. Braids are okay. Like if there are braids in the hair. I did a PDF on that a while ago. There we are. So now we want a highlight. So we're going to use a Syrian sand, and we're going to mix in just a little bit of this bright orange into our Syrian sand. We're going to do that white highlight. The white highlight won't be everywhere on hair, and it doesn't have to be a pure white highlight. It can be just an off-white highlight, but it definitely needs to be bright. It needs to convey the light sourcing and the fact that the hair is shiny. Yeah, most Hollywood movies follow the hero's journey plotting beats very, very tightly. And there's reason for that. It's because it works. And I mean, it's not the fault of the pattern, it's the fault of the movies that do it poorly. I was listening to a book recently that made an excellent point about the hero's journey and like the beats that are common in like movies and many books these days. A lot of people decry it, but it's like when Plato, I think it was Plato too who came up with it, but he didn't actually come up with it. This is what people miss. Plato set out, he was like, there are stories in the world, and some of them are extremely good and really popular and are great stories, and some of them are just kind of meh. So Plato actually set out to identify what made a good story a good story. And the 3-act structure is what he came up with, guys. Like, all good stories share that structure. So it is not that you're using the hero's journey and 3-act structure to put out a cookie cutter product. It's that all good stories have certain things in common. And if you don't utilize some version, then you're probably not going to get a very good product. Yeah, there are variations. And sometimes you have a real outlier like Memento. But it's like those are very much outliers. I'm going to put a tiny dot, like tiny touches of white, this off-white. It's Syrian sand with just a little bit of that combo of Lotus Orange and Sunrise Orange in it. I'm going to just kind of hit a little bit in the middle of everything. I used to be terrible at plotting, and I did go to screenwriting books to help me, actually. And it was the best thing I ever did for my work. And what I found was, is that I was unconsciously already following a lot of 3X structure, and a lot of Hero's Journey beats. Like I was, and that's just if you know how to tell stories, right? We've all read a lot and watched a lot of them. We have kind of a sense. Yes, have fun at the meeting, Crowley. Bye. So we all kind of have a sense of what makes a good story. And in my case, I found that I was hitting beats very closely, even though I never knew what beats were. Yeah, I've talked with David a little bit about like some of the movie stuff and plotting, and he'll share with me if there's a frustrating part of a series that he's watching. And I'm like, well, that makes sense if they do this with it, or that makes sense. And then I'm like, well, what's the theme of this episode? And he's like, okay, I just can't even. Bye, Shadow Raven. Enjoy your lunch. So we've got our little tiny forest of highlights up here. There's just a little bit. Now we want, there are a few more places we want this white highlight other than the crown of the head, although we do have to remember to get the back of the head as well. And this is kind of what I call the halo, is there's always, and usually it's a more centered halo, but because her head is tilted to the side, this group of highlights is right up next to the part, and this one is a little bit further away. Yeah, all the tropes, huh? You can put a fair number of tropes into a book. Oh, and I was unconsciously using tropes too. That's the thing. So all this stuff, people have to remember, like a lot of people kind of diss it, especially some writers when they're new. They're just like, oh no, I'm not going to follow that, some cookie cutter pattern or something, right? Like they disparage it, but it's not that at all. It's like these things are in our minds and they existed prior to people writing them down. So good luck writing a book with no tropes in it. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on your players, right, Big Chimpo? All right, so now we want to look at where are my other strong highlights going to come in. Definitely here on the shoulder, right? So, and right again, you want to put that right in the middle of your previous highlights. Remember the bell curve. But it doesn't have to be super strong. You don't need big dots of white. Yeah, exactly. All of these things. And they make for great stories. Like that's just it. It's like just because people have now quantified tropes doesn't mean that tropes are something that people made up to put in your stories. They're part of great stories, and that's why they were identified. Yeah. Right. Yeah, have fun, Turgeon. Have a good day. All right, little touches of white here, just a tiny little bit, I think. And if you get too strong, like I feel like that's actually a little too strong, what I'm going to do is grab my glaze and maybe even my previous highlight. Now I'm going to wick that off. Let's see if that lightens it up a bit. Oh, your players missed the tropes and hyperfocus. Right, yeah, got it, Gibson. Yeah, so you've got to do that, right? Right, exactly, Valandar. Yeah, there's definitely good and bad ways to execute on it, right? There we go, that's better. So that gives us a little bit of a shine. I want one definitely right here. Alrighty, and then we want a little bit, just a tiny bit here. So I'm using it at different intensities based on where I am. I'm definitely hitting it hard in the top of the head, but the areas down here I'm using a lot less. There's still touches of it to bring out the shine in the hair, but there's not nearly as much as the top of the head, and it's not as strong. So when you thin your paint, you can absolutely do a much thinner off-white highlight and take it down a lot, make it more subtle. And there we are. Yeah, and the other thing, of course, as a GM, it's just that what you think is easy isn't necessarily for your players, right? Like I had to really learn that as a GM. Was that just because it was obvious to me didn't mean that it was obvious to my players, and sometimes I needed to give a little bit more clue. All right. That, I think, is where we're at, guys. You can see where the highlights and light are. Let's see if we can do a pop in on the wings. Ah. Need to look at these guys to get them in right. There. Ah! As I try to get these guys to pop in. That one is not wanting to pop in at all. The other guy was fine. I should have just stopped with that one. Kinda. Really loose. There we go. So the tones of her hair are actually working really well with the skin tones here. Yeah, exactly, Gibson. So since I'm using red-orange hair, the skin tone is very similar, right? It's essentially done with a muted red-orange. So the hair and the skin look good together. They look like they belong together. Now this was one reason to do, let's talk color theory. This was one reason to start with a very dark auburn. Because if I had started with a brighter orange-red, there was a risk that it would clash with this. But since I started darker, I've got more contrast since I started so light with the wings, and so it works. So light-dark contrast is a thing. And red hair is absolutely like an orange-red, and rosy skin is absolutely like an orange-red. It's just the amount of white. So we are good on skin and on wings, and now we just need to dive in on the armor. So maybe next time we'll do chainmail. Because there is little chainmail. Yeah, one wing definitely likes to pop in more than the other one. Orange is a neutral only when it's muted. Because it just makes browns. And even then, like, some skin tones are less neutrals than others. If you have a heavy shift, like toward rosiness, then your skin tone can read a lot more red, and it can essentially count as a red. David is painting a model like this right now. You know, if you go very golden with your skin tone, that's probably going to count as a yellow. It'll go outside of the neutrals category then. But yeah, so yeah, there we go. Hair looks lovely. I'm happy with it. It's very Sophie. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Valendar. Your poor GM. I hope he doesn't like puzzles. Yeah, then they need to be more neutral. Oh. But yeah, David loves puzzles, but he's so good at them, I knew that if I ever ran a game for him, that I wouldn't be able to put any in there, because I'm not good at puzzles, and any puzzle I thought was hard, he would think would be easy. So yeah, so thanks guys. Hopefully you had fun with the red hair stuff today, and we're making progress. We're going pretty slow on her. It'll go a little faster once we hit the NMM. It'll be red, but I don't know if I'm also going to do black, Valendar, because I may do like black with a red chevron or something like that to still keep her in Sophie land. I mean, she has, the cloth actually comes down from here. So you have a color accent here, and it goes down, tucks under her belts, and comes out down here. But then you've got the skirt, right? And then she actually has pants and not actual armor there. It looks like, oh nope, that is an armor plate. There's just weird. It's weird where it connects. So okay, we do have solid armor down there then, and even down to the feet. So we're not going to have any neutrals. We're going to have a lot of metal. It's too tiny. Too tiny, Valendar. Like, some people I know can do that. Some people I know can do a tiny little heraldic symbol. Like, could I do something like a cross? Sure. You could do a cross on this, but you can't, like, do an animal or anything. It's just way too small. Way, way too small. Yeah, this model does not scream out for freehand at all. And do you know why? It's too complicated, and each area is very small. Freehand is something you want to do in a big, boring space. And usually only when it's toward the top of the figure. Because you're going to attract tension, right? Unless it's the back of the figure. So, okay, this model. Very busy on the front. No freehand. None at all. Because look at it, it's very busy. Freehand on the back, because the back is boring. It needs freehand to spice it up. Big, open areas without a lot of detail. Does that make sense to you? So if you look at the models where I've done freehand, it's always on parts of the model that are not globbed with detail. And this entire front of this model is globbed with detail. It's just like I would never do freehand on like the big druid guy I'm working on. This model, no opportunity for freehand whatsoever unless I decide to do a tattoo on her like shoulder, but I really don't need it because there's so much movement and detail everywhere else. Let's see here. So this one, our Marika that we're working on for Paint Along, this one, you all know probably Jess Rich's famous one where she did the city scene on here. And but this is the most boring part of the figure though, right? And I wouldn't do it on this figure because this figure is so full of details already, and Marika didn't do any freehand on the bottom, I think, either. Let's see, where's examples? Examples. Nobody else we're working on right now really has a lot of freehand, except we're going to do it on the back of the Yellow Mage, right? But yeah, you need to like have a reason for your freehand. Like there needs to be a reason for it. Right now, she's going to have so much metal on her. Like, I won't have problems pulling the eye up, I don't think. Because that's, that's the other thing for freehand, right? It pulls the eye. But yeah, I mean, only Lizette had freehand on the front of her, and she was a fairly, like, she had complicated bits, but it was a very tiny freehand. It was a simple little leaf design on the front. And then down in the inside, where I did the brocade on her, if you remember, that was very boring. Like, the cloth on Lizette was very plain. So, yes, and MM is freehand pretty much. Yep. It does the same thing. It's got tight contrast. Anything it's tight contrast. So yeah, this is not a model that I think I would add freehand to because there's just so much already. Like, it doesn't need freehand, and if you put freehand on it, it's just going to be so busy, so busy. And I don't like a busy model. I like for the eye to be able to relax a bit. So you could, like I said, you could do a cross or a chevron or something very simple here and maybe here. But nothing bigger. Anything bigger would be so hard to make read. It's just not worth it. And I think, again, it's just not the right model. Now, if this was a 75 millimeter and 3 times her size, sure, absolutely. If she was the size of this lady, big difference, right? And technically, yeah, if you count NMM as freehand, then she does have freehand on her pauldrons and stuff, right? So, but even here, and yeah, actually, technically I do have some freehand because the cross here doesn't actually have a border, and I painted it with a border. But yeah, so if she was that big and her loincloth was 3 times the size, then yeah, you could do it. You could do it if you had a reason for it. But remember also you want to pull the eye upward toward the face and the torso usually. So yeah, freehand is a plan. Like, freehand has reasons, and the reason isn't always I think I just want to paint some freehand. Like, I never would. If that was the case, I would pick a different model. So, like, we'll do freehand on the back of our cleric, and we might do some on the back of our necromancer. Her front is but here is another example. So, her front is really busy. The only place I might put freehand is the interior here. And if I did, I would keep it small. And then the book, right, will have freehand. But that's not immediately apparent. That's more of an Easter egg. Because you're not going to see it until you look like that. I don't think this is a traditional tabard. But yeah. I mean, historically, sure. I mean, like I said, you could do a cross, you could do a chevron, you could do something simple. But I would keep it to very simple. And I might do a chevron. I might do red and black just so I can alternate red and black down below too. Or red and, probably not red and gold. I think I'm going to need some black. I think I'm going to need some neutral on this model. But yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's just not practical at the scale. Like, I don't think I could do like an animal. I couldn't do a lion or anything on something this small. I wouldn't enjoy it, and then it would just kind of be a scribble in the middle of all this other detail. But yeah, you might get a chevron. Who knows? Doing a Reaper skull is right out. But yeah, you could do a symbol, a simple symbol. You could do a diamond, a star. You could do a star. You could do a sun, probably. Probably do a sun if you wanted it. But again, man, once we do the NMM on all of this intricate armor, it's just going to fall. It's just going to fall right in the middle of it. It's just not going to, like, it's just going to be too busy. No, Sophie does her own thing. But yeah, so like this model, she's busy on the front. She has a lot of detail. The only room for a little bit of freehand is here. I could do something in the corner there if I wanted to. The back, we could definitely do some freehand on this if we wanted to. Although she still has a lot going on up here. So, and it would totally wipe out the cool kind of red-black I've got going on her dress. So, like, make your freehand decisions, like, kind of think about it, right? Think about your reasoning. If you're really just trying to be, like, medieval, cool, but like she's, yeah, I just don't think it, I always look at it as from a compositional and what will make the model look good. And from that position, I'm like just not really sold on freehand on her. And then we've got our dude. So tomorrow, tune in again. Hey, I've gone late 2 days. That means I can totally stop early one of these days, right? Yeah. Yeah, Historical Succubus. That sounds like a good rock band. Rock band name. All right, so we were working on the NMM Gold on, speaking of NMM, on this dude, we took a bit of a break to work on the sword, if you recall. We were working on that, and I like how that's coming out, so we may go back and continue to work on the sword, or I may put it aside and work on the gold a little bit. We may go back and forth between gold and silver. That's a lot of what we've got left on this model, so yeah, folks, yeah. We're getting there. We're slowly getting there. I'm actually kind of looking forward to the weird reverse scales, even though I know they bother many of you, just because I think I'm going to do it in a banded effect. So I was just going to do chevrons, Pendrake. I was just going to do like a chevron of red and black or black and red. I mean, it's got to be hers. It's got to be Sophie colors, so there's going to be red in it, but I'm not concerned with any backstory on this figure. But anyway. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll work on Old Spice Genie tomorrow. And maybe we will do the gold, and maybe we'll try to like actually move with the gold fairly quickly so that we can like get close to getting this guy finished and off our plate. Because I like him and all, but I'm about ready to be done with him. Thank you. Oh. Yeah, Laverne and Shirley. Yep. 75. All right, guys. Yep. Oh, yeah. Hopefully you'll be on. Hopefully you keep power, Twistedoma. All right. Thanks much. Thanks for chiming in. Bye, Big Jimbo. I like your little doggy icon who's waving. Yeah, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will be back tomorrow with Old Spice Genie. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Quindy, for wrangling the cats. Bye.